and the founder of pathtohealthandhealing.com. And I'm super excited to have you here tonight. I think this is going to be a very important thing for us to talk about, and thing that I think a lot of people kind of wonder about. And Julie has a lot of experience. So I'm going to introduce you to Julie. Julie is a certified life coach, life and health coach, personal trainer, and an educator. And she brings over 20 years of experience in learning and development and coaching individuals to achieve their goals. Influenced by functional and integrative medicine, Julie helps others reset their brain and body through food, movement, and mindset to transform how they age, look, and feel. I think we all could appreciate that. She has a special interest in gut healing, inflammation, balancing hormones, and how our thoughts and emotions affect our actions and our ability to create positive change and well-being in our lives. And this is a huge thing, and I am right behind her on all of that. She teaches classes and workshops on prime time health, a proven plan for adults to add years to their life and life to their years, living an anti-inflammatory whole foods lifestyle. Living and eating with food sensitivities, meal planning and prep, restorative movement and exercise, and emotional intelligence for greater health, relationships, effectiveness, and life satisfaction. Through individual and group coaching, Julie empowers clients to achieve their health and personal goals with fresh perspective, support, and accountability. Building community is an important component of Julie's approach, and she leads the Supportive Wellness 360 Facebook group, and also she can be found at juliesmithcoaching.com. So wow, Julie, that's quite a background and a lot of information, a lot of knowledge that I'm so thankful you're here this evening, and you have a lot that you're going to be sharing with us as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Laura, so much. So
you're welcome.
I'm so excited to be here, and I'm very thankful that you invited me and that we're going to have some fun tonight, have some good conversations. So
I really have a lot of questions for you this evening that I think probably a lot of people listening are going to have as well. You're kind of a midlife career changer. Can you tell us your story and what really led you to become a life and health coach and personal trainer to begin with?
Absolutely. I am a midlife career changer. So I was always interested in health and wellness. In college, I taught aerobics and took some exercise physiology classes. And someone is waiting to get on the call. There we go. I became a personal trainer over 25 years ago. I have, but outside of the 3 years that I spent at home with our oldest child, I spent the first 14 years of my career in the corporate world in human resources management. And about the time that our now 17-year-old came along, I left that life to start my own business so that I could have more flexibility to be with our growing family. And I was doing business and marketing consulting for entrepreneurs around the country. And I had a middle schooler and a baby, and 20 months later, along came our third child. And 3 years later, right after I turned 40, we adopted our youngest daughter from China. And I had this business, I had these 4 kids, and I had this business that was becoming a high stress situation for me.
Sure.
And I'd always been a high achiever and pushing myself to work hard and do more. And I bet a lot of the folks on this call can relate to that. But I started to notice changes in my body and my health slowly creeping on over time. I was doing all these things and raising all these kids. And it started with indigestion and allergies and chronic sinus infections in my early 30s. But looking back now, I can see that there were signs of imbalances even when I was in college. I just didn't know, right? And so then later I started to have brain fog and anxiety. I just felt so exhausted that there was no energy left for anything. And I'd wake up after a full night's sleep and I'd still feel exhausted. And my body ached everywhere for months on end. And I thought, what is happening to me, right? And I went to my doctor and I got the usual tests, and he said, everything looks normal. He diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. He said I was fine. Yeah, but I knew I wasn't fine.
Yeah, you sound like a lot of people that I see, and that's true. So many people go through all of that and then they don't know where to turn, or, they're maybe just told, everything's fine, or eat a healthy diet, deal with your stress, but have no clue how to do that. So that is why I think, health coaching could be an effective thing for a lot of people. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you a little bit more about health coaching.
Yeah. Why would someone turn to health coaching, and how did you get into health coaching from that? How did you progress from where you are to
right?
Health coaching, and why is health coaching so effective?
Yeah. And so through my health experiences and what I was going through, I just saw myself on this freight train, headed toward chronic disease and pain. It took, once I had that diagnosis from my physician, and what he wanted to offer was a pill for anxiety and something for pain, I knew that wasn't what I wanted. So it took me really becoming a partner in my own healthcare, right? Becoming the CEO of my own health. And, through that process, you and I connected. I just knew that I had to do something different. We have colon cancer that runs rampant in my family, and I lost my mom 7 years ago to colon cancer. And I just saw myself heading down a similar path based on what I was experiencing, and I knew I didn't want that. And so I think that really my lifelong passion for well-being, my personal health journey, and watching that of my mom, it really led me to this career of life and health coaching. Through my path and through this journey, I knew that I wanted to help others to be able to get over the hurdles that I did. And I truly believe that our bodies have the ability to heal themselves, but we need to be able to provide the right environment inside our bodies in order for it to do so.
Right.
Yeah. And so why is health coaching so effective? Well, I think to fully understand that, I think it's really important to talk about roles, right? Health coaches don't diagnose, treat, or give specific advice about medical conditions like a medical provider does. Traditionally, an expert like a traditional medical doctor, for instance, will give advice, and they'll assume that people will change their behavior once they have information that indicates they should. But the motivation for the person, sorry, I'm going to let somebody else in here. The motivation for the person, or the patient in this case, is completely extrinsic. My doctor told me I have to.
Right.
Right? And how many of us love to be told what to do, and then we run right out and do it, right?
None of us.
Right? None of us, exactly. So the coach, on the other hand, takes a collaborative approach that the physician just doesn't have the time to do. The coach encourages clients to talk about their need for change and their own reasons for wanting to change. The coach helps the client tap into some deep motivators, or what's really important to the client. It's their intrinsic motivation. And the coach trusts that the best ideas for how to change come from the client themselves. And so instead of being told what to do, the client develops the plan of action with their coach's assistance. And then the coach helps the client to focus on realistic goals, to celebrate the wins along the way, and to stay accountable so the changes become reality.
Wow. Yeah. That's saying a lot. So do you find that when you're allowing the clients to make those goals that are congruent with their lifestyle, that then health coaching can be so much more effective in that way?
Oh, absolutely. And just because, what I say is important for a client, or what their physician says is important for the client, may not be, for that client. So first of all, they have to know what change is important to them, why that change is important, and then they have to decide, am I ready to make that change, or does that look like something else?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it is that I'm going to do, why is that important to me? Because change isn't easy, right? And we get stuck in the sticky middle, and when we're trying to change and life hits us, and all of a sudden we're having a hard time, right? And so it's really important to know those intrinsic motivators and what's really important to that client, so that they can move past those obstacles that get in the way.
Yeah. So how do you kind of get to those intrinsic motivators? How do you kind of help people get the right mindset to get there in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I like to talk about finding purpose in your health journey, right? And so we really talk about what's important to that client, not just in terms of their health, but what's important to them in terms of their life, and how does their health and well-being impact their ability to be able to do those things? What will life be like if they're not able to do those things? But really, it's a self-exploration and finding out what's most important to you.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So I know you kind of talk about resetting the brain and the body through food and movement and mindset. So can you say more about that relationship between those three and how those kind of fit into each other and how they influence each other?
Oh, they do. So it's like a three-legged stool, the way I see it. So, one of the things we know that studies have shown is that the vast majority of chronic illness is caused by long-term systemic inflammation in our bodies. And you talked about this the other night on your autoimmune webinar too, Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the chronic inflammation, of course, can be caused by a variety of sources, from toxins in our food and environment, from food sensitivities and leaky gut, stress, and more, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so the food we put in our bodies and how our bodies respond to that food is extremely important in determining whether or not our bodies stay well or get sick. And that includes even when we have a genetic predisposition for a particular illness, right? So that predisposition doesn't mean we'll actually get the disease, but if we create a toxic inflammatory environment within our body, that genetic trigger has a much higher chance of getting tripped.
Absolutely. As you can see, Julie's speaking my language.
Yes. And we have this obesity epidemic in our society today. Mm-hmm. We know that 69% of Americans are overweight and 39% are obese. Mm-hmm. And when we have obesity, particularly increased amounts of belly fat, we have that inflammation and toxicity in our bodies. And because, as you know, Laura, that excess body fat is a specific kind of fat that stores toxins in our body that cause inflammation and disease. And so all this excess weight is a leading reason why many people also live with persistent pain in their bodies too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how does the movement and the mindset fit into just what we're consuming? How do we kind of look at all three of those together on that three-legged stool?
Right. So I'll just talk about each one of them individually, and then we'll bring it all together. But that second leg of the stool then is movement, and movement is necessary to a healthy, pain-free life and to be able to manage your weight. The health of our joints, our strength, our flexibility, and proper movement are critical. But many of us have forgotten how to move. Our society is experiencing a sedentary syndrome, I like to call it.
Very much.
Yes. And this is an area, this is one of my challenge areas. It's an area that I've neglected at times over the years because life got busy and something had to give. And when I started to have some struggles with my health, I managed to get and stay consistent with daily walking, but I learned the hard way that neglecting to strengthen my body and maintain flexibility was a big mistake. a lot of us, we have posture issues because we sit at a desk all day long, and we give birth. Those, women, we give birth, we carry around babies on one hip, and all those things create imbalances in our body and can lead to some chronic pain issues. And that's what happened with me. Not to mention the wear and tear on your body as you age. So, and for myself, I'm now recommitted to resistance training 2 to 3 times a week, with a focus on core and inner abdominal muscles that support your spine and pelvis and hips. Am I perfect at this? No. But the consistency, the consistency remains a challenge for me. But just to mention pain, because I think a lot of us, when we have, as we age, or if we're dealing with an autoimmune or other chronic illness, we often experience pain. And when we experience pain, we don't want to move because it hurts. And so then that leads to more weight gain, and it's just this vicious cycle. But it is possible, right? It is possible to move, and to move in ways that help us to manage through our pain, and to begin to enjoy moving our bodies again. So one of the things, the other thing is the mindset, the third leg of the stool. This is about how our thoughts, our perceptions and emotions impact our ability to create and sustain positive change, and how they can either keep us stuck or help us move forward toward our goals. And in that example of chronic pain, what we know now is that pain isn't created by the physical body, it's created by the brain.
Absolutely. There's a lot of research on that. Yeah.
There is. Yeah, it's our brain's job to protect us, and it receives input from both inside and outside of us, and it decides when we're in trouble. It's that fight or flight response. And when we experience pain, it's our brain's way of protecting us. So it goes that there are ways that we can use our brain to help to treat our pain. That could be things like motor imagery, where we imagining that our body is fully recovered and tricking our brain into thinking that we're moving without pain, or using visualization exercises. There are a number of ways that we can use mindset and use our brains to help us not only manage chronic pain, but to make the decisions and to create the habits that we want to create for optimal health. And so the three of these really work together in terms of creating that environment inside of our body for us to be well. The food is medicine, right? And the movement also, not only just for the stability of our joints and the strength of our body, but movement, we know now, makes such a difference in terms of our emotional health. And it affects, we know now, studies have shown that movement and exercise is helpful, just as helpful as, for example, an anxiety med, right? In helping us in dealing with some of those emotional issues that we have.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So as a health coach, my guess is that you're trying to bring all those three things into awareness with a client.
Absolutely. So when I think of well-being, I think of it being how we eat and how we move and how we live, how we work and serve, and how we connect with others. It's a very holistic way of being. And in all the years that I've coached people, it really doesn't matter what issues someone has come to coaching for, whether that's a leader who has come to coaching for issues in their business or their leadership, or someone who comes to life or health coaching. They're a whole person, and all of that comes with them. And so almost always, irregardless of what someone came to coaching for, they bring all those other pieces in with them, and they come up in the conversation at one time or another.
Right. And my my guess is that's, where health coaching really can come into play. Because like when somebody comes to see a practitioner like myself or others, we're so crunched for time in the conventional medical model that it's very frustrating a lot of times for us as providers too, that we know there's so much more there. And really, healthcare providers, they're educators, but they're not necessarily coaches. Coaches, come at it from a whole different angle. And I don't know if that's kind of, for you, how, your approach to things. I know you have something called Thrive with 5 model. I don't know how that plays into some of this as well. If you can kind of tell us about that and how all that kind of comes together.
Yeah, and to your comment about the provider not having the time and the training, and that is one of the key things that makes, especially that synergy between the provider and the coach,
right?
The client patient is, in your role, Laura, as a functional medicine practitioner, you spend a lot of time looking at someone's background and getting to the root cause of of their challenges, and then being able to recommend lifestyle changes and other interventions that may be helpful. But you, like other medical practitioners, don't have the time to go alongside that client over the long term as they set about trying to implement those changes. And so that's what, the coach goes alongside and walks with you on that journey and really helps you create the plan of action and then walk it out, even when it gets tough, to work through those obstacles so that you can come out on the other side and that change has become a reality for you. And so the Thrive with 5 model is, I mentioned that I believe well-being is very holistic. And as I worked with clients and have traveled on my own life journey, I began to see that there's 5 areas that are really key to our physical and emotional well-being. And so one of those, the first one, is eat real food. And we talked about this one earlier. We didn't go into that in great detail, but eating, cleaning up the way we eat and eating foods that are not processed and don't have the added sweeteners and chemicals and sugars, but we're eating real food like it was created. And the second one is to move more. We covered that one too. We've forgotten how to move. We've forgotten that joy of movement and how good it really feels to use this incredible body we've been given. And the third one is to stress less. And by this, I mean to change our relationship with stress, because stress isn't going to go away. We know that. But we can change the way we view it and how we choose to engage with it. And that's where mindset and mindfulness really play a big part in this one.
Yeah.
And the fourth one is called Know, Choose, Give. This goes along with mindset. It's how we identify, understand, and engage with the thoughts and emotions, both ours and others. It's about self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy. It's what we call emotional intelligence. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the fifth one, is connect with others. And it's exactly like it says. We're created to be in community with one another. We're not supposed to go it alone. And that encompasses our relationships and the supportive groups we engage with, and giving back, or how we serve others in the communities we live in, even our spirituality. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, travel alone. But if you want to go far, travel together.
Good proverb.
Yeah. And that's why creating community is very important to me in the work that I do. And I think especially in this area of health and wellness.
Yeah. So on that fourth pillar, the Thrive and 5 model, you said know, choose, and give. So that sounds like that's something very unique to your approach. I don't know that I've heard that before. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Right. Yes, absolutely. So, like I said, this refers to emotional intelligence, or our ability to recognize, understand, and regulate our thoughts, perceptions, and feelings, and those of others. It's a mindfulness. So often we do or say the very thing we promised ourselves we wouldn't do.
Yeah.
We get triggered by something or someone, and then rather than making an insightful, purposeful decision, we let our emotions run the show. We simply react on autopilot instead of responding with intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very key. Yeah. So if I was going to come to you, because I felt like I needed your help, as a patient, say my physician told me I need to go do X, Y, or Z to work on my health. And if I was going to come to you, how do you help your clients as a health and life coach? How do you kind of start with them? Can you just kind of take us through that process a little bit? So if somebody's thinking, I'm thinking this is something I need, and I'm not sure, what's going to happen when I go see her.
Yeah. Yeah. Generally, what happens is I meet first of all with a potential new client right off the bat for a complimentary session. It's usually about 30 to 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
Because you're right, because people don't wake up in the middle of the night and think, I need a coach, and they may not have had an experience with that before. And so when we can get on the phone, a lot of times it looks a little bit like an actual coaching session, because in my mind, whether I work with someone or not, I want to see that they get value from that if nothing else, they have clarity at least on what's the next step. Right. And if they choose to work with me as a coach, if it's for health coaching, there's a pretty extensive assessment. There's a form that I have folks fill out online so that I know what types of lifestyle choices, I know what their eating habits are, their movement and exercise habits, their sleep, their stress. It's a way to gather some information. And then we spend about 90 minutes together that first session going through that. And I can ask more questions and learn more about them. But I also want to learn, what are those things that are most important to them that they want to achieve?
Right.
Kind of narrow it down a little bit, right? Because we can't tackle the whole world at once.
Right. And my guess is you're probably not telling them what they have to do. You're meeting them where they're at.
Absolutely. And we're all at various stages of being ready to change, right?
Absolutely.
Somebody could come to one of these sessions and they might just be thinking about it. My doctor told me, this might not have been on their radar at all. Maybe they don't even think they really have a problem with this thing. They may know they don't feel very well, but what the physician is saying or the medical practitioner is saying, maybe just the connection hasn't been made yet. Or maybe they're thinking about making a change, but they're just not sure yet.
Yeah.
Or maybe they've decided, yep, I want to make that change, but I'm getting some information and I'm just not sure where to start. So, there's a whole continuum of places where somebody might be. And we want to kind of get a handle on where they're at, because we might approach that, take a different approach depending on where they're at in that readiness for change.
Right, absolutely. Sometimes, like you said, it might be that they're just kind of at a fact-finding stage, or just coming into awareness. From there, it's kind of you struggle with oh, this is going to be hard. I don't know if I can do this. I've got to do this forever. So all those different thoughts are going through people's head, and that's natural. But unless you kind of figure out where somebody's at along that continuum, it could affect, their experience and the effectiveness of the coach with that person, I would presume.
Absolutely. And really everyone's path is unique. I think sometimes you sometimes see health coaches out there and they'll sell a package or a program and they're promising you this or that. But it's been my experience both as a life and health coach and in business coaching and consulting, which I've done in the past. There isn't one cookie cutter approach that works for everyone. Mm-hmm. There just isn't. And that's why, I never talk about, a blueprint for this or that or 10 steps, and then you too can, feel like $1 million or whatever. We have to discover what that individual's path is going to be. And so, someone may come to coaching and say, you know what, my functional medicine practitioner said I need to go through this elimination protocol and it's going to take me 6 weeks and I don't know where to start and I don't think I can do this. I mean, they're
guilty.
Yeah, right. Right. And so they know they're on board with it. They know they're going to do it. They know they need to do it, but they just don't know where to start. We can take a pretty direct path right there. Right. But somebody else may come in and they're not there and they're not sure. They know they need to make changes, but they're just not sure where to start and what that would be.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long, do you spend with somebody in coaching? I know your first session's maybe about 90 minutes. Does that, of course, vary depending on what their goal is?
So subsequent sessions after that are generally about 45 to 50 minutes. And we'll meet twice a month, sometimes 3 times a month. I will, a lot of times, and again, it depends on the person. Sometimes people like to meet about every 2 weeks, and that gives them time in between to start implementing and doing some of the actions that they've committed to. For other people, accountability is really important, and they really want to meet every week. So I've had clients where we've met weekly for 30 minutes instead. And so we can kind of create that based on their needs. But the other thing that I offer for clients is an online portal. So it's a private space that they can log into, and I can provide them with resources. They can provide things to me. They can track their food and their habits that they're trying to create in there. They can message me in between sessions and I can answer questions. So it's kind of like having a coach in your corner, the coach in your pocket, right? You come along with you and a little bit of extra support along the way.
Right, right. And I know that you see people locally face to face, but you see people all over.
I do. Well, don't you? Yeah. Yes. So I do. For individuals who are local, I can see people in person, but I can see people from anywhere because most of my clients, frankly, like the convenience of being able to meet via phone or like this via Zoom. And so it's just like we're sitting across from each other. We can see each other. We can talk with one another. And so, the 3 different ways to meet with clients.
Yeah. So I do want to take questions from people because I'm hoping people have questions. But before we get to that, if somebody wanted to contact you, how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things, if you're interested in learning more about life or health coaching or fitness after 50, that's I work with folks in that way in helping them find movement that they enjoy. Or if you want to learn about that or classes and events, you can email me at julie@juliesmithcoaching.com. Let me see. Let me put that in the chat
box. Could you put that in the chat box for people?
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Let's do that. There's that. Another way for you to connect would be to join my Wellness 360 Facebook group, and I will put that in the chat box too. So, like I mentioned before, it's really important to me to build community. I think we're better together, and so the Wellness 360 Facebook group, we focus on the 5 areas of that Thrive with 5. We do challenges sometimes. We have recipes. We have just fun things, and what I really want is to help others to connect with each other in that community, to help them support one another, people who are on a similar health journey. And from that group, in the next few months, I'll be launching a live Wellness 360 experience, a group coaching experience, and it'll be for anyone, whether we'll meet twice a month, and it'll be both locally and via Zoom. So and so if you're in that group or on my list, then you'll be able to know when that launches.
That's great. One thing I think to get out of this evening, I'm going to take questions here, but is understanding what a powerful relationship that can be between a health practitioner who understands and values what a life and health coach offers, because here I am at the one end. I need to figure out, as a clinician, I need to figure out the root cause and get to that and develop a protocol. But a piece of that always is working on that 3-legged stool piece that you talk about, working on the nutrition and the movement and the mindset. And that health coach is so complementary to what we're doing as functional medicine practitioners to help keep people on the path that they're desiring to go on, to try to improve their health. And we can't do it alone. I mean, we try to do it alone, but I think it's just a very complementary thing to a health practitioner to utilize and realize the value of a life and health coach to people as well. So
yeah, and I think it's that relationship with a coach is one of those few times in a person's life when the other person, in this case your coach, their only agenda is your agenda. And seeing you, helping you succeed at what's important to you. As much as our family and friends love us, they all come to the relationship with their own agenda, right? Their own perceptions and their own thoughts. And so, the coach will help draw out what's important to you, will help you overcome those obstacles to achieve what it is that you want, will speak truth and love, like that direct communication, but and provide resources and all that. It's just it's just very complimentary to, because it's what your medical provider would do if they had the time, right, and could do that. But I think the other part of that too, and getting back to that emotional intelligence and mindset piece, our thoughts and our feelings equal our actions. So what we're thinking or feeling or perceiving about any specific situation is going to directly impact our actions, whether that's deciding what to eat, whether to get to the gym on a consistent basis, how we respond to our children. Are we going to yell when we get frustrated, or are we going to react with intention? So it's being able to become self-aware and mindful, and being able to make decisions with intention and purpose in order to get to that goal that you're trying to reach. Those are some of the skills that we work on in coaching. And
I was going to say, because it's very overwhelming to people, to try to do these things when you've got so many variable stressors going on in your life. To be able to get that down to bite-sized achievable things that you feel that you can start with. And sometimes you have no clue
it's true
where to start because you're just too overwhelmed.
Right. And it's true. And we have so much pressure around us in the media and so much information. It's so easy to get confused or feel like we have to do all the things, right? And
Right.
we have to achieve everything. And, honestly, sometimes it's just easier. That healthy transformation happens just one habit at a time, and sometimes that's where we need to start. Not everybody can rip off the Band-Aid and completely rehaul the way they eat and change everything all at once. It's
Yeah.
everyone's on a different path.
Yeah, I would probably totally agree with that, because as a health practitioner, I almost want to regurgitate out all the things that I'm thinking in my head, that will help a person get maybe to where they're wanting to go.
Yes.
But it's hard for me to hold back because I just want to give it all to them. I want to get it all out there.
Right. Right.
That's, I think, where, health coaching is very valuable, and you can put the brakes on a little bit from, the stuff that may be kind of spilling out of my head, and so forth.
Yeah. And sometimes, we may find ourselves, in the opposite situation, right? Where it's not that we're having such a hard time making healthy changes, but that we've almost gone all the way to the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And we're just so consumed by it that it creates another stressor in our life, and that cortisol goes up, and that doesn't help us either. And so, sometimes it's finding just some moderation. And also, I will say, sometimes it's not always possible to heal completely from something, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes health coaching is about finding well-being in the midst of health challenges.
Oh, wow. That's pretty powerful right there, I think. Yeah. Well, I definitely want to make sure that we give people a chance to ask questions here tonight. So if anybody has any questions, I would love for you to type them in the chat box now, because this is your opportunity. If you are ever curious about what it's like to work with a life and health coach, now's your chance to ask. Before you're trying to decide if you're going to make that commitment to move forward with a life and health coach as well. And like I said, Julie brings a lot of experience to the table, and she's somebody that never had you wouldn't say she's never had a health challenge. She's had a health challenge, and that's why, this is what's brought her to where she is. So she's very relatable in that sense, and understands what it's like to be there and to be frustrated and not to have answers. And, I think a lot of people that I see today, that's definitely where they're at. They've gone the traditional route. They've had the traditional workup, which is very important to do. But the challenges that we're facing today, often we don't have the tools or the knowledge or the training in a conventional setting to meet what is needed today in that regard, because these are chronic issues people are dealing with. They're not acute issues. We are very good at acute issues in our conventional health care. And, equally so, a lot of people in traditional health care are very frustrated with the lack of time that they can provide to people. And I think as time goes on here, we're going to continue to see the value and investment necessary with the help of health coaches. Yes.
And I think sometimes even working with a health coach, sometimes we don't know what we don't know, right? And so when you're working with, if you're seeing a traditional medical provider and you don't know what you don't know, sometimes working with a coach who has that functional and integrative background or a bent can help you even to know the questions to ask. right? To be able to talk with your practitioner in order to help you find the answers that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Or to refer to other professionals, functional medicine or integrative professionals that can also help in that way too.
Right. Yeah. So Deb is asking, what's the general ballpark investment of working with a health coach? And I'm sure that can vary depending on what you're doing.
It does.
And also the coach. I mean, because I've seen very wide varying
Yes.
Packages, costs, investment,
Yes.
plans across the board all over the internet. So can you kind of
Absolutely.
help that a little bit?
You'll see health coaches that will, charge very, very nominal rates, and then you'll see health coaches that charge extremely high rates. I mean, several $100s an hour kind of thing. The thing about coaching that I think people don't know, because how would they? Coaching isn't regulated like a medical provider would be, or like a therapist is. They're not required to be licensed by a state. That doesn't mean that there aren't professional standards. There absolutely are.
Right.
It just means that anybody can hang out their shingle and call themselves a coach. And so that's why you're going to see such a wide variance in terms of how coaches work. Other coaches who are professional coaches who are serious about the work that they do,
Right.
We've had training through accredited coaching schools that are accredited by professional bodies like the International Coach Federation or the Consortium for Health and Wellness Coaches. And so that requires a coach to have had not only many hours of training, but also mentor coaching and documentation of hundreds of hours of coaching with clients, in order to achieve different levels of credentialing. So you can see how there can be a big difference, and there's a big difference between many of the various coaching schools too. Some coaching schools don't really teach someone how to coach, but they teach them about all different kinds of eating plans, right? That doesn't really help in terms of helping you make the behavior change. And so having said all of that, yes, coaching runs the gamut. You might see a package where somebody just is going to run you through a protocol of some sort. But when you are working with a coach that's focusing on behavior change, you're really spending time in a conversation with that individual who is taking purposeful action to help you in making change and providing resources and working with you in between sessions too. So, I would say look for someone who is credentialed, and you're probably going to spend, if you get someone who is serious about their work and is credentialed, you're probably going to spend at least a couple of $100s a month and on up in order to work with a coach like that. So
and then that time can vary from person to person. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So the next question is from Sherry, and she says, what do you do when you find you can't help someone?
So as a coach, and as a coach, I'm credentialed through the International Coach Federation, and we have a code of ethics, and we are always on the lookout for signs that tell us that we're not the person to help someone. So if I'm working with someone and my instincts are telling me from what I'm seeing and from the work that we're doing that someone should be working better served by a therapist, I'm going to make that recommendation, right? It's outside of my scope. My scope of practice. If somebody in health coaching is needing more specific guidance, I'm going to refer them to someone like Laura. I get questions all the time where I will say to someone, you know what? here's something to consider, but you need to go talk to your medical provider about that. Right. And so it's, I would say don't look to your coach to give you that specific medical advice, because that's outside of their scope of practice. And so I have no qualms at all about referring someone out. I have an extensive network of colleagues and professionals that I work with that can help people with different things. And sometimes we work together, and then other times it's just someone is better served elsewhere.
Yeah. And I think that's very important, because you want somebody of high ethics when it comes to this, and that, a coach is not meant to diagnose or treat a condition. They're trying to help you with, dealing with your life from maybe what a condition you have or been diagnosed with. They're trying to help you with your lifestyle factors and meeting certain goals to improving your health. And it's important not to pigeonhole a health coach into that position, because that's really not their role. And I think that's, if somebody's trying to understand, well, if they're already seeing me, for example, there's so much education that I can give, and from a diagnostic standpoint and a treatment standpoint, but to take that to the next level, that's, where you come in, because sometimes there needs to be this intensive accountability, and somebody that they can bounce some things off of when they're struggling in the middle of making these lifestyle changes that maybe aren't necessarily, they're not going to be a medical question, so to speak.
Right.
They're more having to do with how they're trying to figure this out in their day-to-day life.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I will say, I see somebody has asked a question about where I'm located.
Where you're located.
Yeah. I'm located in Des Moines, Iowa. And so that's how Laura and I connected, because she used to live in Des Moines. And, I will say, in regard to the working with coaches and states, different states have different laws regarding who can provide certain kinds of advice regarding nutrition and health and that kind of thing. And some states are very liberal. I mean, anyone can hang out their shingle and call themselves a nutritionist and give you advice. And
I think Colorado, where I am now, is very liberal.
Yes, and Colorado and Oregon. Iowa is on the exact opposite end of that spectrum. Right. We are what we call a red state. And so in order to give very specific advice related to a medical condition, you have to be someone like Laura, or you have to be a registered dietitian, or so there's some pretty strict guidelines there. So just, I think, being aware that, especially for some of you who are from other states, you may be from a state where a health coach can just give whatever information and call themselves a nutritionist. But just remember that, just I think, be aware of that.
Because that's something people aren't aware of, really.
Right.
And I wouldn't know that if I wasn't already in the functional medicine space, and understanding that those laws vary from state to state, and what liberty you have as a health coach or don't, and how restrictive it may be from one state to another.
Right, exactly. So, I work with people on it. I can work with people on advise people on generally eating clean and eating healthy and for their health, and to reduce inflammation and all of those good things that we want to strive towards. I could help if somebody suspected that they had food sensitivities because they'd been reading and they were experiencing these different things, and they wanted to do an elimination. They wanted to eliminate gluten and dairy for a period of time. I absolutely would support someone through that. But when we start to move in that direction, then I'm going to start to possibly bring in people like Laura, who also can look at it from other perspectives and actually advise them on other things that could be going on too.
Yeah. So I think that is, very important for people to kind of understand. If you didn't understand that, yeah, health coaches, some are very well trained. And then there's other people that are going to hang up their shingles. So it's important to, ask that question, what's your training, what's your background, are you certified, those kinds of things and
Yeah.
so forth.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think even, being aware that there are differences in terms of, where someone got their health coach training or their, coach training from one program to another and what they focus on. So, if that's important to you, if you really want to know, ask and then do your research.
Right, right. Yeah.
You be an informed consumer, right? Just like being a CEO of your own health and being a partner in your healthcare. I think that is so important right now because it used to be we would go to our physician and whatever they said goes, right? We trust in that because they're pre-internet, right? But now internet and all the books and publications, there's so much information out there that it boggles our minds. We don't even know where to start. But it's good. It's good for people to read and to ask questions.
Absolutely.
But it's important to read credible pieces from credible sources and then, bring those questions to your practitioner. Talk to someone like Laura. Talk to a health coach. I frequently provide resources to individuals, to clients all the time, but I have very carefully vetted sources that I use, functional medicine practitioners and people who look at research and really valid research so that I am pointing them in areas that are credible and that I know I can feel good about them looking at and trusting that information.
Right, right. Absolutely. Wow. Well, we're at an hour. My goodness, that was a lot of information this evening, and I'm hoping everybody got a lot out of it. I don't see any further questions, and I just want to remind people if they want to get a hold of Julie, certainly. Oh, thank you, Deb. Nice to see you as well. And thank you for the question. But I just want to tell people, if you want to get a hold of Julie, just go to juliesmithcoaching.com. We've got that up on the screen, I think. Yes.
Yeah, that's my website, juliesmithcoaching.com.
And then your email is julie@juliesmithcoaching.com if somebody wants to, send you a question. And then also you have a great Facebook group, Wellness 360. And I would encourage people listening, if you're wanting to find out more, get in that group. I mean, that's kind of a low, entry point commitment where you can kind of get a feel for this whole process.
Absolutely.
As well. So,
and I have a free gift for all of you who've signed up.
Oh, great.
So, yeah. So because you signed up to attend the call, I'm going to email you. It's called my 5-day gut soothing menu plan. So you can ditch the bloat, have more energy, and enjoy your life. So if you're someone who has bad tummy feels, and you're wanting to soothe your gut. This is a 5-day menu plan. It includes recipes and a shopping list. But you know what? Even if your gut's just fine, I think you'll enjoy it too. So I'll be sending that in the next couple of days in the email. And I think I will also, I send a newsletter as well. So you'll get those with some articles and tips and recipes and that kind of thing too. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. I appreciate that. And I'm sure everybody else does as well.
Yeah.
So if no one has any other questions this evening, I've kept everybody for about an hour here. I try to keep things around that amount of time. Certainly if you do and you think of something after tonight, you definitely can listen in to the recording and also contact Julie directly. You do have her information now if you want to do that. And Julie is located in the Des Moines, Iowa area if you would like to meet with her face-to-face. Otherwise, she works with people all over. So
yes, absolutely. Thank you
So,
so much, everyone, for being here. I know how precious your time is, and so thanks for spending an hour with us this evening.
yeah, I agree. So everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye.